Good morning, YouTubers, and welcome once again to the eastern wing of the Stink Bug Works. We've been sitting around and inventing things and making stuff. As you can see, I've been making progress on the rigger. Hang on, I'm going to have some jet juice. Good stuff. Anyway, I've mounted some hardware. I've removed material where there was material. You know, cutting this hole makes it real easy now to get at the strut mounting screws. So not only did I save half a gram, I made it easy. Speaking of saving half a gram, every single part that went into this, with a couple of minor exceptions, but every single part had something done on it to relieve weight. You know, I rounded the corners on the strut. Yeah, that doesn't make a big difference, but when you do that to everything, half a gram here, 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 half a gram. Pretty soon you've got an ounce. That's half the weight of the motor. So the question is, and I'm sure you're asking me right now, I have a motor and a speed control. I have a servo and a drive line and a propeller. And I've got a receiver over there as well. What does it all weigh? How much does this weigh? Hang on, I need jet juice. Ladies and gentlemen, this weighs 1 pound, 454 grams. Now, it's going to get a little more weight. In fact, here we'll talk about this. I installed a piece of carbon fiber on the inside of this sponson, and I'm going to drill and tap that carbon fiber for a turn fin bracket. So it's going to get a turn fin bracket and a turn fin, and that's going to add some weight. But all up, I'm thinking this thing's going to be ready to go without a battery at about 265 grams. That's going to be my goal. And so I still have these end caps to put on. I have that to drill. You know, let's talk about this epoxy coating. This, believe it or not, is several coats of epoxy. Now, how do you get epoxy on several coats to look that thin? Here's how you got to put epoxy on. You take a paintbrush and you work epoxy into the surface. You work it in and you work it all around and you work it in. And then you take a paper towel and you wipe off as much as you possibly can, like you're trying to clean the piece of wood. You know, it says, oh, I got to get all this off. Got to get this off. And you do that, and all it does is fill in the microscopic pores. And you do that a couple of times, and there's not a whole lot of epoxy, but you've successfully sealed everything. Hang on. I have not glued in the water pickup yet. You can see it crashes with the servo, but I want to leave this section straight so I can go through the little piece of tubing that's in the transom there. And then once it's all glued into place, I can bend it out of the way. And I haven't really figured out a way I'm going to exit the cooling water. Some of my constraints are I don't want to block access to the battery. So I want to keep it flush up against the side as best I can. I don't want to add unnecessary weight. So it's got to be small and lightweight and use the least amount of material possible. So I'm still looking at a water exit. If I were to just put a hole in the side, that would mean the tube would have to be coming, or the tubing would have to be coming in perpendicular, which means it could be getting in the way there. And so I haven't come up with a good idea. So that's going to kind of be on the back burner while I finish this up. And so I still need a couple more coats of epoxy on the sponsons too, but they're pretty close. They're pretty close. So there you have it, boys and girls. Progress on the rigger. Now, I have a whole bunch of projects in the back works. And Wayne called me up the other day and said, "What do you think about this hull?" And I looked at the hull and I said, I need some jet juice. I looked at the hull and said, that's a cool hull. I really like it. I'd like to build one someday. And I already have a motor that would work in that hull. Now, it won't make the fastest boat out there, but when every boat you have is the fastest possible you can make it, that means that every boat you have is going to be operating right on the razor's edge, and things are going to break. You just can't get away from that. If you're going for maximum speed, you will break things. Ask anybody who's been there, done that. I can't tell you what you're going to break or where you're going to break it or when, but you're going to mess stuff up. So I talked it over with Wayne and says, let's build something that's fast enough that people go, oh, wow, yet not crazy fast that it's hard to drive. And, let's set up a bulletproof thing that we can just go throw this in the water at any old time and away it'll go, and maybe spend more time on making it look good rather than go as fast as it possibly can. So he's down with that idea, and I'm actually thinking of another jet challenge, maybe a jet build-along. Now, the hull is not cheap. The motor is. And so we're looking at doing some trade-offs, but that's just some of the thinking. So we're going to do a little build-off, at least between Wayne and I. And, if anybody else wants to join in, you're welcome to it. Until next time, jet out. Good morning, YouTubers, and welcome back. You are in for a treat. Not very often do you get to have a Dr. Jet doing it. I mean, I talk about it. But seldom do you get to see a Dr. Jet doing it. And since I want to get a coat on here and get it cooking off early today, I'll just do this as we're going along. So here I am, I'm epoxy coating this. And if you notice, hairs are coming off this brush and getting left there, and it just doesn't bother me. And I'm trying not to get much in these holes. If I do, I come back later after it's hardened with a 5mm reamer and just kind of scrape out the epoxy. But I try to keep it out of there. So I slather epoxy. Now here's the deal. I've got the phone started, and I'm going to have epoxy all over my hands real soon, so I'm not going to be able to turn off the phone until I'm done with this. My plan is to take these, and I'm going to take them into the oven and cook them at 150 degrees for a couple hours, and that should cook off the epoxy. Now, these pieces already had an epoxy coating, but when I rounded the corners and such, that epoxy coating got taken off. So this is just kind of like adding to it. So it'll get a couple of coats like this. So you see how much I'm putting on and how much I'm getting all over everything. And then you take a paper towel and you clean it. You gotta clean it. Get all those hairs off of there. Get all that epoxy off of there. Think of epoxy, if you would, as liquid lead. You do not want to add any more lead to your sled than necessary. So, I got more on my gloves now than I do on these sponsons. And I buffed the stuff out. It's easier to buff it out now while it's wet than to sand it out later when it's hard. So if you buff it out like this, and that's what I'm saying, get it down to where it's almost nothing. And that way you can keep your edges really sharp and your weight buildup virtually minimal. So there you go. There is a coat on that sponson, and boom, it's going to go into the oven. Now you get to watch this one, and as soon as I take my gloves off, I'll turn off the phone. So you see, it doesn't take long. What takes long is the darn curing. So we're happily painting epoxy on our sponsons here. Vinny remarked that the grain on his looks so nice, and I got to agree. This is, for cheap plywood, some of it was, kind of dark and grainy, so I tried to get as much of that on the outside as I could when I built it, although it doesn't always give you that choice. So back to this. You want to get lots of epoxy everywhere, smeared into all the little nooks and crannies, the microscopic gaps. And then once again, I got more of my hands than I do here, but that'll all work out. So there you go. How to get a nice epoxy coat on your parts without adding excessive weight. And it'll take a couple coats like this to get a nice outside finish. Inside, I'd call that done. And in fact, that's what's in there, is about like this. I gotta wipe my hands off. So we're getting close to done, boys and girls. A quick little buff. Huh? What do you think? That didn't add much weight at all, but it did add some waterproofing. Okay, jet out.